Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's waiver consolidation and portal overview training. We're very excited to have you with us today. Happy Wednesday. We are going to go through a few upfront comments here, and then we will move straight into our actual training for today. So the first thing, just want to state that the purpose of today's training is to present a high-level overview of the portal system. Our main goal is to ensure that you have the basics of understanding and navigation to be successful. Separate and more specific trainings that further detail functionality will be made available soon. And also, please enter any questions that you have into the Q&A chat, and those will be addressed at the end of training today. A few things to note about the system as we step into this training. One, the portal is a role-based access system. So that is in line with standard security protocols where we use that role-based security access. Whatever your role is will dictate, who you can see and what types of functionality you have access to. It is important to note that the training presenter frequently logs in and out of the system, impersonating various roles so that the functionality we need to be able to show you can be seen. Today's demonstration is presented using non-production environments. This is done to protect individuals' sensitive information, and the data you see is not real. Keep in mind, in some instances, provider entity names are displayed, perhaps a AAA as well. However, the associated individual information is not real. We also wanted to take this opportunity to share some information about the upcoming waiver consolidation go live timings and systems that will be offline. So the CAM system will be down for waiver consolidation cutover starting Thursday, June 26th at 5 p.m. Eastern. Portal will be down for waiver consolidation starting subsequently on that Friday, June 27th at 5 o'clock p.m. The Beads Gateway will be down for waiver consolidation cutover starting Friday as well at 5 o'clock p.m. There are a few other ancillary systems that are not impactful to this audience, but all systems will be restored for live use on Tuesday, July 1st at 8 a.m. Eastern. Also want to call out that all data migration from CAMS to portal related to the individuals that are part of waiver consolidation efforts will be completed by Tuesday, July 1st as well. So there is a large migration of data so that everything that has been done in CAMS to date on these individuals will be present in the portal at the time of go live. Some additional and helpful information we want you to be aware of. Today's recorded version of this training will be made available. An announcement will be sent with the details as to how you can access it. If you have questions, we encourage those to be mailed to the beads.scphelp@fssa.in.gov inbox. That inbox is monitored by multiple individuals, and that will be the most effective, efficient way for us to get you a response to your question. Once waiver consolidation is implemented, your agency should continue to submit JIRA tickets for support staff assistance. Hopefully this is familiar to you all. One difference would be that we would ask for you to select the BEADS portal as the application when submitting those JIRA tickets going forward. And please include as many details as possible, such as the individual's portal identification number, and you'll learn more about that in the upcoming training. I'm going to pause here for a moment just so that you can see some of the referenced acronyms that may come out throughout today's trainings. Hopefully many of them are familiar to you, but others may not be. So this, of course, will be embedded and included as part of the overall recorded training that you'll have access to later. But just wanted to give you a few moments here to take a look at some of the references and acronyms that may be used throughout the training. And on that note, we are going to dive right in to this training today. We're excited to share with you and hope that this gives you a great baseline to work from. Thank you.
Our first topic is BEADS Portal User Administration, in which we'll discuss how you can access and manage your account. To demonstrate this, I'm already impersonating a AAA user with the AAA admin role. Once you log into the BEADS portal, in the top navigation menu, click on the admin dropdown and select Users, which will display all of the pending, suspended, or active users for your organization. Again, just a quick side note, for this demo in the training environment, you will see the mockup data shows all last names as Area 8 and all first names as the various roles and security groups, which we'll discuss more in just a moment. Supervisor, case manager, intake coordinator, etc. But when you access this space in the main BEADS portal, it will display all users' actual last and first names. Click on the Edit button to open the Edit User screen. When a new user account is set up, it's important to please review to ensure that all of the information is entered correctly for purposes of receiving documents regularly generated from the portal, like service authorizations, PCISP PDFs, and RFA state forms. These are all BEADS portal generated documents that will display information like first name, last name, email address, and phone number. So if that information is being edited by another user, like an administrator, then it can be modified in this way through admin, users, and then edit user. And if you're editing your own profile information, then it can be edited by clicking the drop down in the upper right-hand corner and clicking on profile. It's also very important that each user reviews the time zone to ensure it's accurate. So if, for instance, your workstation is located in a central time zone, then you need to ensure that the time zone is changed to central time. Finally, it's important that the group membership is correctly assigned for the purpose of setting the correct security group access. Click on the Add Security Group button and check any security groups that should be added or uncheck any security groups that should be removed. Then click Save. At that time, after clicking Save, a verification message will appear at the top saying Success, user has been updated. And that is how you can confirm that your updates have successfully been made. Now, we're going to show you a high-level overview of the BEADS portal, but in doing so, we're also going to highlight some specific areas of functionality that you are more often likely to regularly see and use. For instance, in the course of this overview, there will be actions taken contained in the top navigation drop-downs, like how we've already discussed admin, users, and editing the user information. Or, like later on in this overview, when we discuss return to previous waiver action, which could only be taken from the processing dropdown, processing, and return to previous waiver. Like that, we'll eventually discuss actions and functions that you'll access from this top navigation dropdown. To that end, while we're here in the top navigation dropdown, there are two callouts that we'd like to briefly discuss that are located in the resources dropdown. The first is reports. In the report section, this is where you'll be able to run queries to generate reports for things such as monitoring and service planning, incident reporting, and demographics. The second important callout under the resources dropdown is the resource page. In the resource page, this is where you will find a significant library of documentation that's going to detail trainings, release notes, frequently asked questions, and other published guidance. Often, it will be the case that BDS or the Tech Help Desk will refer or point you to documentation contained on the resource page. So it's important that you know where to actually find it. The top navigation menu, resources, and resource page. Okay, so returning to our BEADS portal overview, let's show you the dashboards and the grids. To do that, I will need to change my dashboard preview from AAA Admin to, let's say, Case Manager. As a case manager, you will see here several tabs within the dashboard. The Homepage tab provides a grid of recently viewed individuals and allows quick navigation back to those records that were recently reviewed. The Actions Activities tab displays grids with records for which action needs to be taken or that requires some follow-up on something in the near future. The PCISPs tab includes grids related to the PCISPs, services, and other changes within them. Next, the Waiver Management tab contains grids that are specific to processes related to the individual's waiver status. The Pre-Waiver Activity tab contains a grid showing waiver decisions. And finally, the Documents tab will show documents uploaded within the last 10 days. So returning to our BEADS portal overview, in order to demonstrate this, let's enter PID 100101 in this top search field. We'll hit enter. And after searching an individual's PID, we're taken to the individual's profile, specifically landing on this left navigation basic information page in the individual's profile. Now, before we dive into the components of the left navigation, there are a few things to briefly point out that are contained in the individual's profile header of any individual whose record that you are reviewing in the portal. In the individual's profile header is where you will find the individual's HIPAA name and RID, portal ID, assessment pro IID, the assigned case manager and organization or entity, the waiver type, and the waiver status, along with the waiver plan year. Just below that, you'll see links to the individual's waiver history, PCISPs, profile, which is where we currently are, case notes, documents contained in the individual's document library, and other things such as the monitoring checklist, transitions, and appeals. Okay, back to our profile overview. Now, there are several components to an individual profile, specifically these first 4 tabs of the left navigation that must be completed in order to validate an individual's profile, which is also required to submit a PCISP for services to be authorized for that individual. We'll return to completing and validating those 4 parts of an individual's profile in just a moment, but you'll also notice that there are several additional sections of the profile left navigation menu. So let's just briefly touch on those. The waiver page is going to generally display the waiver information like the waiver type, the status, and start date. The waiver page also displays what is referred to as the little caseload audit, which is very much a one-stop shop showing last finalized and new upcoming updates and due dates for PCISPs, ICF-IID, NFLOC monitoring checklist, or person-centered monitoring checklist, unannounced visits. Also, once you create an LOS assessment, that will also appear here in this little caseload audit. The waiver page also includes several grids, such as the waiver status change request grid, the request for authorization or RFA request grid, and LOS assessments. Underneath waiver, we have other links such as authorized providers, service provider referrals, assessment history, where any historical CAMS documents would display if you click on this link, person-centered monitoring tool, and the manage page. Now, the manage page will display the individual status log along with options to take various onboarding actions that we'll cover later on in this demonstration. But the manage page is also where you'll check the individual's profile to validate that all required information has been completed within the first 4 tabs before you can proceed to creating and submitting a PCISP. Now, let's briefly demonstrate how to accept or decline an individual's waiver. For this, I am already impersonating a AAA intake coordinator. It's important to remember here that individuals will be auto-assigned to AAAs based on the individual's county of residence. To onboard an individual, you would click on the Pre-Waiver Activity tab, and the Waiver Decisions grid will appear. In here, we see Portal ID 132457, and we can go to the Actions column and select an action to either accept or decline the waiver. For purpose of this training, I'll quickly show you how when you take an action to decline the waiver, the decline waiver confirmation modal appears, and you must select a reason for declining the waiver. You may enter any additional text you would like to enter at that time. And at that time, you would click Save. For our training now, I'm going to close the decline waiver modal by clicking Close. And instead, for Portal ID 132457, we will select the action to accept the waiver. When you take that action, the Accept Waiver confirmation modal appears. And again, you may enter any text you would like to enter at that time and click Save. Again, our portal ID is 132457. Now, once we accept the waiver, we receive confirmation that that has occurred. Click the Close button, and the individual will disappear from the waiver decisions grid. Now, if we go to search that individual in the search field 132457, let's pull this individual up and see some of the changes that have been made now that we have accepted the waiver. Again, when we search an individual, we automatically land on the Profile Basic Information page. Instead, you want to go to the bottom left navigation and click on Manage. And once we do that, we now see in the individual status log grid that we have that this individual referred to AAA and has been auto-accepted by the AAA. So that is the process for AAAs accepting or declining an individual's waiver. So now let's review the process for completing and validating an individual's profile by going back to the first link, the basic information page. The basic information page is going to contain a lot of personal, contact, and demographic information about our individual. The things that must be completed are the first name, last name, the RID, the date of birth, the social security number, preferred contact method, a home phone number. Under demographic information, you'll have to complete gender, race, ethnicity, legal status, as well as marital status. This question here of is the individual a veteran of the armed forces, that must be answered yes or no, and a verified date must also be entered in this date field. And you must also have a language for the individual. So that is the information that must be completed on the basic information page. Again, first name, last name, RID, date of birth, home phone number, preferred contact method, the demographic information, answering whether the individual is a veteran of the armed forces with a verified date, and the language. The next link is for the living arrangements page. And you must have a living arrangement entered here in order for the individual's profile to be validated. If you need to add a living arrangement, there's a button here to do so. You would click Add Living Arrangement. You would select the living arrangement type, add an effective date, answer the question yes or no of whether the individual lives in a provider-owned or controlled setting, also known as a POCOS. And you may also add a housemate in this section as well. The next section that must be completed has to do with relationships. There must be a minimum of 3 records added on the relationship page. The first one must be an emergency and or primary contact, and our individual must have someone listed within the relationships that can serve as the individual's emergency and or primary contact. Also, on the relationship page, there must be 2 healthy living providers that are added, a primary care physician and a dentist. In order to add any one of these relationships, meaning a relationship that can serve as the individual's emergency or primary contact, and a healthy living provider, meaning the dentist or primary care physician, click on the Add Relationship button. In order to add the emergency and primary contact, you would select the contact type, primary, emergency, and of course you may add more than one, just like our individual currently has one contact serving as both the emergency and primary contact. If you need to add a primary care physician or a dentist, you would click on Add Relationship. You can leave this top field blank, and then under relationship type, you must designate a primary care physician and a dentist. Once that information is added, then all of the necessary relationships will be added to this page, and you can move on to diagnosis. An individual must have a diagnosis recorded in order for the profile to be validated. To add a diagnosis, click the Add Diagnosis button. Select the diagnosis type. Once you select the diagnosis type, a drop-down will appear and you can search for a description of the diagnosis that you are looking for. Add that along with an effective date and then click Save. We have a diagnosis added here already, so I've just clicked Cancel. And it's also at this time worth mentioning that for individuals who are on TBI waivers, there is a special diagnosis type that must be added. Once all of the information has been added in these 4 tabs for basic information, living arrangements, relationships, and diagnosis, then you would click on the Manage link in the left navigation menu and click on this button to check the profile for PCISP. Let's click that button now. If all of the required fields have been completed, then a validation message will appear. Success! The validation for the individual's profile has passed. So now that we've received confirmation that our individual's profile has passed validation, let's preview how to create and submit a person-centered individualized support plan, also known as a PCISP. It's important to first point out that you must first enter 2 intake case notes before we can begin creating a PCISP. Now, to create a PCISP, you would click the PCISP link, but as I have said, you must first enter 2 intake case notes to create your PCISP. So if we try to click on the PCISP link, we will be met with this message that says a PCISP cannot be started until the intake initial contact and intake meeting held events have taken place and are reflected in the case notes. So to enter those 2 case notes, let's click on the case notes link at the top. So to add the 2 required intake case notes to create our PCISP, click on Add New Case Note. And the Add Case Note Information modal will appear. Select an activity date, which will default to today's date, but you may choose other dates if needed. The category will be intake, and the level of interaction is going to be intake initial contact. Once we have added this case note, and you may enter something in the commentary here. Once you've added that case note, click Save. And now you see our first initial intake contact case note has been added. Now there's another one that's required, which is initial meeting held. So let's click on Add New Case Note again. The activity date, set that. Under the category, again, intake. Level of interaction this time will be intake meeting held. Add any necessary comments and click Save. Okay, now in our case notes grid, we see we have the 2 intake case notes added for the intake initial contact and intake meeting held. Now, if we want to create the PCISP by clicking on the PCISP link, we will be able to do so. Once you're on the PCISP page, go to Select an Available Action and click on Create Initial PCISP. It will ask you to confirm, are you sure you want to create the initial PCISP? Let's say yes. We'll take just a moment for the initial PCISP to load. Okay. Now we'll go through the process of entering the information that we need for this PCISP. In the left navigation of the PCISP page, you will see several selections here: My Preferences, Goals, My Emergency Plans, Services, Costs, and Manage. Any place you see a check mark here are sections of the PCISP that must be completed and have a green check mark after you complete the page in order to move forward with reviewing your final PCISP and submitting it for authorization. So let's begin filling out our PCISP. First, let's enter a date of team meeting. We'll select today. And now we need to complete all the fields that have this red asterisk. So let's just put in some text for each of these fields. Now you'll see that My Preferences page has a gray check mark, but if I hit Tab to move on to the next section, this check mark will turn from gray to green. Now I'll click on Goals and Desired Outcomes. You must complete this section of the PCISP. Again, it's grayed out. If I hit Tab, it will turn green. And now I can click on My Emergency Plans. Again, all 4 of these fields must be completed in order to move forward. My gray check mark once I hit Tab now turns from gray to green, And now we'll move on to services. So for purpose of our demonstration, let's click on the Add New Service button and add the Case Management Service, CMFR. CMFR there, let's select that. Here, the service provider has defaulted to IPMG West Lafayette. However, you could click the drop-down and choose another service provider if that's what you would like to do. You must enter a need within this field. And so we'll just enter the word training. And we will click Save and Distribute Units. Once we click that, we now see that we have 1 unit of case management added for each month of the service plan. From there, click Save. And now we have a success message that the service detail was changed and saved successfully. And now we see CMFR with the 6/13 start date, the end date, the rate, the number of units, and the total cost. And that now appears in our services grid here. So let's say we're finished with adding CMFR and would like to submit the PCISP for authorization. To do that, go to the Manage page. Once you click the Manage page, you'll have several options presented. One would be to check the individual's profile again, just to preliminarily validate that the individual's profile is completed with all the required fields to proceed. You can also check the PCISP to get preliminary validation that the PCISP is completed with all of the required information. And then for purposes of our demonstration here, we will click on Review PCISP, which is where we will review, print a draft of the PCISP, if that's what we would like to do, and then also submit it. So clicking on Review PCISP is going to create this draft PCISP here. And in the upper right-hand corner, you have the ability to create a draft PCISP that you could print off. But for our purposes, let's validate the PCISP. So we'll click this Validate PCISP button. And once we do that, we'll have a green success message here. The validation for the individual's PCISP passed. And now you have to confirm that the providers in the grid are supposed to be added to this PCISP. So to do that, you must click the green check mark. Also, just pointing out, there is an option here to request state review of the service plan. However, we'll discuss that in more detail when we show you how to update a PCISP. So for now, we have confirmed that this provider should be on this PCISP, and we're going to click Continue. Okay. So now we have a message here showing that validation is successful, and it's asking if we want to submit for authorization of services. This is a somewhat lengthy message. However, it provides some critical next step information about email receipt of the service authorization and PCISP PDF based on how and when the services are authorized. Again, it's a little lengthy, but it's very important. So let's review it and read through it at this time. The message says, once you click on Submit for Authorization of Services, the system will do the following. If the services on the PCISP are auto-authorized, an email with the service authorization attached will be sent to each associated provider's SA email address. Case managers are reminded to provide a copy of the PCISP and SA to the individual, parents of minor children or legal representative, as applicable, and IST members who are not providers. So that is what the first section says. The second section says, If the services on the PCISP are not auto-authorized, an email with the service authorization attached will be sent to each associated provider's SA email address upon BEAD's authorization of the services. Case managers are reminded to provide a copy of the PCISP and SA to the individual, parents of minor children or legal representative as applicable, and IST members who are not providers. And the third bullet says, if the services on the PCISP require BEADS to confirm the waiver start date, an email with the service authorization SA attached will be sent to each associated provider's SA email address upon BEAD's authorization of the services and confirmation of the waiver start date. Again, case managers are reminded to provide a copy of the PCISP and SA to the individual, parents of minor children or legal representatives as applicable, and IST members who are not providers. In the comment section below, you can add any comments that you feel are necessary, and you can submit authorization of services. Now, this page will sit here for a few moments while the system is creating the PCISP, authorizing the services, and creating the service authorization that is going to be sent out to the providers. Once the PCISP is submitted for authorization, then we'll return to the PCISP page and can see that the PCISP now appears in the PCISP grid with the status of authorized active. The PCISP can be downloaded from this grid by clicking on the download button, or it can be downloaded from the individual's document library by clicking on Documents in the top header. In the document section is also where we will find PDFs of the service authorization that will be available for download. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the document section. While we're here in the individual's document library, it's important to note that all portal-generated documents, which include service authorizations, PCISP PDFs, and requests for authorization, or RFA state forms, are going to be encrypted and password protected. So in order to open and view these documents, a password must be entered. The password for each of these documents is going to be the letters PID asterisk, and then the individual's specific numerical portal ID. So our individual's portal ID is 100101. So once we've downloaded these documents, in order to open the documents, we will have to enter the password PID asterisk 100101. Okay, so there's a little bit on documents in the document library and encrypted documents that are automatically generated from the BEADS portal. From here, let's take a look at LOS assessments. Now, as we know, LOS assessments must be created and scored to determine the level of ADS, AFC, AL, and SFC services that can be added to an individual's PCISP. So to create an LOS assessment, click on the individual's profile link, navigate to the left navigation waiver page. Once you're to the individual's profile waiver page, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll select an available action and click this to display the drop-down. That's going to display the 4 LOS assessment types. Now, let's say for purpose of this demonstration that we want to create an AFC assessment, but we accidentally click on an ADS assessment. It will ask, are you sure you want to create a new NFLOC ADS LOS assessment? Well, let's just say yes. Now let's say we begin the process of creating our ADS assessment and quickly realize that we have created an ADS assessment by mistake. when in fact we wanted to create an AFC assessment. To delete this ADS assessment, return to the profile waiver page. Once we've done that, we will see that our in development ADS assessment will appear in two places on the profile waiver page. The first is within the caseload audit. Here we see an NFLOC ADS LOS assessment has been created. The next place that we'll see it is at the bottom of the profile waiver page under the LOS assessments grid. In this LOS assessments grid, we know we did not want to create an ADS assessment, so we are going to click on the trash can icon to delete that assessment. Enter any comments that need to be added, and it's going to ask you to confirm that you want to delete the assessment. Click yes. Now we see that our erroneous ADS assessment is now removed from the LOS assessments grid. If we scroll back up, we still see that the ADS assessment is located here still in the little caseload audit. However, once we simply refresh the page, and go back to the waiver page, and now we see that the LOS assessment that we just deleted has been removed from the little caseload audit. So now let's return to our process of creating the AFC assessment. Go to select an available action and click on Create NFLOC AFC LOS assessment. And it will ask us again, are you sure you want to create this assessment? We'll click yes. Now the system will load the assessment. Let's go through and click on our selections here for each of these sections. And as you know, every selection that we click on is going to start accumulating a score for the assessment. So I am just randomly going through and adding responses. And now after I've completed all of the responses to each of the sections, click Submit. Add any comments you would like to add. Click Submit again. And after our assessment is completed, we receive a confirmation message here in the top right-hand corner. Success, the level of service assessment was completed. Now that we have created the correct LOS assessment, we see on the profile waiver page that the LOS assessment has been added here to the little caseload audit at the top of the page. And if we scroll to the bottom of the page, we will see in the LOS assessments grid that this record has been added to this grid along with the total assessment score. A PDF of the LOS assessment will eventually be available for download, but it's important to note that the PDFs of LOS assessments are not automatically uploaded to the individual's document library. Okay, now that we have created an LOS assessment, a Medicaid waiver provider choice list should be generated so that an individual can select a provider for that service. So to do that, in the profile left navigation menu, click on Service Provider Referrals. And then in this dropdown, we want to have the option of generating Medicaid waiver provider choice list. The waiver type will default to the same waiver type as our individual, H&W, H&W. Although if for some reason this needs to change, you have the option of choosing from the available dropdown other waiver types, but let's stick with H&W since our individual is H&W. Also, we will select the county or counties that the individual is willing to accept the services in. For now, let's just select Adams and Allen. And the service that we are going to add, we'll select this available drop down here and select the service that you would like to add there. Click the Generate button. Click Save to download the choice list to your computer. And click on the icon in the upper right-hand corner to open the PDF. And here we see the Medicaid waiver provider choice list for the service that we selected, Adult Family Care Level 1, in the counties that we selected, Adams and Allen. And here are the 3 providers that would be available for this individual. Okay, now that we have added the LOS service and generated the Medicaid provider choice list, let's go ahead and update our PCISP to add the new ADS service. To update a PCISP, we click on the PCISP link in the top navigation. And then within the PCISP grid, we select the PCISP we want to edit. Again, as of right now, our PCISP is in a status of authorized active. But once we actually edit the PCISP, this status will change to in development, which means that it's in edit mode. Okay, so in the left navigation menu, in order to edit the PCISP, we go to the bottom selection and click on Manage. And now the third option down gives us the option to edit the PCISP. When we click Edit, a message will appear very politely asking us to confirm that we want to edit the PCISP and also letting us know that all updates to the PCISP must be made and submitted while the PCISP is editable. That means that if you make any edits to the PCISP, you have to complete the process of submitting the edited PCISP for any updates to be saved. Let's go ahead and click yes. And now our PCISP is going to be opened in edit mode. And as you can see, the status has changed to in development. Now, let's say that we want to make a change to the PCISP, but we try to navigate away from the edited PCISP before actually submitting it for authorization. Let's say we just click on the profile button. Oh, now we receive an error message saying leave site. Changes you made may not be saved. If you click on leave, then you'll be removed from the PCISP edit page and any changes that you just made will not be saved. So let's click cancel. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and update our PCISP by going to Services and adding a service. Now that we're on the Services page, we will click Add New Service. We'll select the service here. Let's go with AFC 1C. We'll select the county, say Adams, and we'll select the provider, go with provider 1, and we'll add a need in the field here and click Save. Now, we see each of the months in the service plan listed below with all units as 0, but with a total unit hour limit of 353. Let's say we are going to add 10 units per month to each of the months of the service plan. So that gives us 120 units. Let's put in 120 units and click the Distribute button. And now we see 10 units per month have been distributed to each month of the plan year. We'll click Save. And now we see the validation success. The service detail changes were saved successfully. And we see in our services grid, now we have AF1C added as a service to our PCISP. Now, if we come down and click on the Manage page to submit this edited PCISP for authorization, again, we can come to Review PCISP. Clicking that button is going to generate the PCISP, and in the upper right-hand corner, we will click on Validate. And we have a validation message here. Success, validation for the individual's PCISP passed. Now we have to confirm the providers in the grid below and click Continue button to continue submitting the PCISP. So we will click Confirmed for both of these providers. Now, if you'll recall, we initially called out that there is an option here to request state review of the service plan. Let's choose that option now so you can see how the plan is going to be submitted to BEADS, and it's going to be in a status of submitted pending authorization until BEADS approves the services. So let's click this button now to request state review of the service plan, enter any comments that we need to enter for BEADS when they review it, and click Continue. Here again, you'll have this submit for authorization services information telling you what is going to happen with regard to email distribution and receipt of the documents such as the service authorization and the PCISP PDF. In this instance, we have requested BEADS to review the services on the PCISP before authorizing them. So therefore, we'll fall into the second category now. If the services on the PCISP are not auto-authorized, an email with the service authorization attached will be sent to each associated provider's SA email upon BEADS authorization of the services. So there will be a delay. Once BEADS authorizes the services, then the service authorization and PCISP PDFs will be emailed accordingly. So here we will enter any comments we need to enter and click on Submit for authorization of services. Now we are taken back to the PCISP page, and within the PCISP grid, now we see two records. One was our initial authorized active PCISP, and now we also have this edited PCISP with updates that we have submitted to BEADS for review before authorizing, and therefore this PCISP is in a status of submitted pending authorization. Now, let's discuss how to create and submit a request for authorization, or RFA. Similar to PCISPs, in order to begin the process of creating an RFA, you must first enter an RFA case note. So click on the case notes link, then click the Add New Case Note button. Select the activity date, which for purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to select June 1st. Under Category, select Team Meeting, and under Level of Interaction, select RFA. Enter any commentary as needed, and click Save. Now you can see that under the case notes grid, we do have an RFA case note entered. Now that we've entered the RFA case note, to begin the process of creating the RFA, click the PCISP tab. Then click on the PCISP for which the RFA should be created. Once the PCISP is open, in the left navigation, click on RFA Request. Now, it's worth just briefly pointing out that you'll initially see two tabs, each displaying a grid containing RFA records. The RFA Request tab, which would display the status of any pending RFA requests, and the RFA History tab, which would display any historically approved RFAs. So now, to create a new RFA, click on the RFA Request button. And when you do that, a modal will display asking you to confirm that you want to create a new RFA request since it cannot be undone. Let's click Confirm. And now we can begin completing the necessary fields for our RFA request. I'll briefly point out that we do have some tabs at the top here. The RFA request details, which we will go through the process of completing in just a moment, along with RFA status changes showing the process of any changes for our RFA request, along with the Documents tab, which we will have to upload a document and attach it to our RFA request, and the submission details. Now, we just created our RFA case note, so let's go ahead and click the button to link our RFA case note to our RFA. Here we go. This is the one we just created, and now we are going to click the link button, and it will say our case note was successfully linked to the request. You can click Close. Now that we've linked our RFA case note to our RFA, we will also need to upload or link a document to the RFA as well. So click on the Documents tab in order to do that. If you have any documents that you would like to upload, you may select the Add Upload Document button. For purpose of our demonstration, we'll simply link a document from the document library. And when we click on Link Document, our individual's document library will display, and for this purpose of the demonstration, we'll simply link the top document here, which is a service authorization. And once we click on that button, it will gray out, signifying to us that it's been uploaded or linked to our RFA request. And now we'll click the Close button. And now we can see here that this document from the individual's document library has now been linked to our RFA request. So back to our RFA request details. Let's say for purpose of this demonstration that our individual needs to have a lift installed. For here, under RFA type, we select the RFA type, and we will select Specialized Medical Equipment Installation. Under the RFA category, we'll select Lift Chair. Under the requested cost, let's just put in $1,000. We'll select our provider, enter the number of bids, enter in any bid comments, along with the required field for overall purpose of the RFA. And there will be some additional questions down here to answer. Let's make sure that each of these questions are answered. And we'll have to select a date for when did the above conversation occur. Let's again choose June 1st. Now, back to the top of the page in the select available action, we can select submit for review. And now we have some additional fields to enter and to complete. This is the update RFA request status to submit for review. In order to do that, you must complete these fields here. So has the PCISP been updated with the needed information for the RFA request? Let's say yes. Has a physician prescription or clinical evaluation be provided? Let's just say yes. Have the appropriate photographs been provided? Let's just say yes. And we'll have an action date here of today's date, 6/15, and enter any comments that you would like to enter and click submit. These details will now be saved to our RFA request. And now, if we click on our RFA status changes, we now see that we have an RFA submitted for review. For purpose of this demonstration, I briefly logged out as the case manager, logged in as BEADS to approve the RFA, and have now logged back in as the case manager to show that on the RFA request status changes grid, we now show at first the RFA was submitted for review, and then it was approved by BEADS. So now back to the RFA request details. You must enter a date completed in order for this RFA to be approved. So now let's click on today's date. And under select available action, we'll click verified completed. Once that validates, there will need to be a verification result that's entered into this field, and then click save. Now we have a modal saying the RFA has been successfully submitted. We'll click OK. Now, if we go back to the PCISP left navigation services grid, click on that. And now we'll see an entry here for the specialized medical equipment installation for the cost of $1,000. In addition, if you click on the Documents tab for the individual's document library, there will be a form that's generated. It's this form here, State Form 4750. And if you click to view on that form, again, that is a BEADS portal system generated document, and you will have to enter the password to view the encrypted document. In addition, you'll also note that there has been a newly generated service authorization and finalized PCISP, both of which will show the RFA request that's been submitted and approved for the $1,000 lift chair installation. Now, let's briefly discuss how to create an annual PCISP. Here in the individual's profile waiver page, again, we see this caseload audit that the last finalized PCISP was on 6/13/2025, and that the next PCISP due is on 6/1/2026. So it's important to remember with creating annual PCISPs that it can be created at any time. However, an annual PCISP can only be submitted within 100 days of the next PCISP being due. So with that in mind, to create the annual PCISP, click on the PCISP tab. And in the Select an Available Action dropdown, click on Create Annual PCISP. It will ask you to confirm that you are sure you want to create the annual PCISP. We'll click Yes. And the annual PCISP is now being created with all of the information and services copied over from the previous PCISP. So here we would select the date of team meeting. We'll select today. And now you see that these sections of My Preferences, Goals and Desired Outcomes, and Emergency Plans are all pre-filled with the information that was contained in the previous PCISP. So you would make any updates as needed for these three fields and then click on the Services button. Now again, the services from the previous PCISP have been copied over into this new annual PCISP. However, you may notice that there are 0 units for each of these services. From here, you could add any services that need to be added or delete any services that need to be deleted. Let's say we are going to delete AF1C. And it says, please note the selected service will be deleted from the PCISP. Let's confirm that. And we'll see that that previous service has been deleted. Now for CMFR, case management, we do see again that there are 0 units here. So let's click on CMFR so we can add our units. Now that we've clicked into CMFR to update the units, now we see we have 12 units to distribute. We can change the 0 to 12, click the distribute button. And after doing so, we should see here that 1 unit per month has been distributed of CMFR for the entire plan. Now we can click the Save button. And we see 12 units of CMFR distributed. Now, from the left navigation, click on Manage. Click on Review PCISP. Click on Validate PCISP. And when we do that, we see here there are some validation errors that must be corrected before we can actually submit the PCISP. And it says here, the start date of the annual plan cannot be more than 100 days in the future. That's what we initially discussed, that while an annual PCISP can be created at any time, it can only be submitted within 100 days of the next PCISP due date. So we see that. We also see another validation error here that the level of care is required and the next assessment due date must be after the PCISP start date to submit the PCISP for authorization. So let's click OK. Again, we won't be able to submit this PCISP. However, we do see that we have the PCISP type is annual and the status is in development. So now if we go back and click on the PCISP tab, we see here that we have our previously authorized active PCISP and also now our newly created in development PCISP. And this annual in development PCISP will sit in this grid in an in development status until within 100 days from the next due date of the PCISP, you go into correct and submit this PCISP. Now, let's discuss Person-Centered Monitoring Tool, also known as PCMT. From the Profile left navigation menu, Click on Person-Centered Monitoring Tool. Note that the next checklist due date is going to be based on the individual's plan year. And every 3 months, a new checklist must be completed 15 days before the next checklist due date or any time after that due date. Click on the Add New Checklist button. Notice on the left-hand side that there are 3 sections of the checklist that must be completed: the HCBS required questions, the health questions, and the PCISP questions. First, enter a meeting date. For purpose of this training, we will select 6/15/2025 and then begin answering each question in each section of the PCMT. Select. Does the individual have a choice of activities? We'll select yes. Does the individual have privacy in their unit, including a lockable entry door? Yes. Is the individual able to access their personal possessions at times of their choosing? Yes. Is the individual able to have visitors at times of their choosing? Yes. Is the individual free to receive and open mail in private? Yes. Does the individual have the option to privately access internet and telephone services? Yes. Does the individual have the choice to have a roommate or select the roommate? Yes. Does the individual have the freedom to furnish and decorate their residential unit? We'll select yes. Does the individual have the freedom to come and go from their home as they please? We'll select yes. Individual has the option to set up or administer prescribed medication in a private location or a location of their choosing. We'll select yes. Is the individual limited to a certain area of the setting? And let's say no. Does the individual have privacy during medical and therapy services and consultations? Let's say yes. Does the staff treat the individual with dignity and respect? Let's say yes. Is the individual able to choose where they eat without restrictions? Let's say yes. Is the individual able to choose what they want to eat? Let's say yes. And does the individual have access to food at any time? Let's say yes. Does the individual know how to file a complaint? For purposes of this training, let's go ahead and select no, so it can be demonstrated how a PCMT CAP or corrective action plan is created. From here, now we see that all questions have been answered for the HCBS required questions. Let's move on to the health questions now. Has the individual seen their primary healthcare provider within the past year? Let's say yes. Does the individual report any unmet medical needs? Let's say no. Are the individual's acute healthcare needs being addressed in a timely manner? Let's say yes. Has the individual experienced harm? Let's say no. Does the individual make statements that indicate they may be experiencing abuse, neglect, or exploitation? Let's say no. Now that all of these questions have been answered in the health section, we see a green check mark has been entered here. And now let's move on to the PCISP questions. Is the individual's person-centered individualized support plan addressing the needs and preferences of the individual? Let's say yes. Has the individual experienced a change in support needs or circumstances requiring a change to the PCISP? Let's say no. The case manager verified with the individual, family, staff members, and providers that services are being delivered as directed in the PCISP. Let's say yes. Now, after we have completed all of the questions in these 3 sections of the PCMT, now let's click Save. Here, the Submit Checklist modal appears, and it says verifying that all required fields are completed. And here we see that a cap has not been completed because recall, when we answered the HCBS required questions, we left one of the last questions answering no, so that this cap could be created to demonstrate how we can complete this cap. So now let's click Close. And at the bottom here, now we click on View Cap. And now we click on the View Cap icon. Doing so opens the Corrective Action Plan modal. And every one of these fields needs to be completed in order for the cap to be completed and submitted. So we'll just copy in text to each of these fields. Under modification effective dates, let's click on or enter in 6/15/2025. And now we'll click on this drop down here for frequency of team review of the rights modification plan. Let's just say quarterly. And let's finish completing each of these fields. For the contact phone number, we'll enter in numerical digits for the phone number, and for the provider contact email. And now target date for completion. Again, we'll select 6/15/2025, resolution, and let's go with date resolved, 6/15/2025. Now that we've completed all the fields for the corrective action plan, now we click Submit. And at the bottom, we click on the Complete Cap button. And now we receive a verification. All corrective action plans have been marked as completed. Click OK. And now if we go back and click on the person-centered monitoring tool here, we see we have a year-end cap that has been completed. Also note here that the next checklist due date is now 3 months after the previous due date that was displaying here before we completed our PCMT checklist. Now that we know that our checklist has been completed, along with all of the information that was required to complete the CAP or corrective action plan, let's click back into the checklist, scroll to the bottom, and click Save. Now we see a modal saying and verifying that all of the required fields are completed. Once you see that, click the Finalize button. And now we'll receive confirmation that the checklist has been finalized. Click OK. Then, if for instance, any changes need to be made, you can click back into the checklist, scroll to the bottom of the first page, click the Unlock button, enter an unlock comment, and click the Unlock button again. And now you'll see a message that the checklist will remain open until resaved. Click OK. And you can now make any updates that you need to make within the checklist. After you've made updates, click the Save button again, and you'll receive another confirmation modal verifying that all required fields are completed. Click Finalize again. You'll receive again a modal saying that the checklist has been finalized. Click OK. And any updates to the person-centered monitoring tool checklist will have been saved. The next topic we'll cover is how to submit requests to interrupt the waiver. And once the waiver is interrupted, how to request to restart the waiver. Let's say that the individual's waiver needs to be interrupted. Here we have an individual who is active on an H&W waiver with the plan year starting 6/13/2025. To request a waiver interruption, you will click on the individual's profile waiver page, and in the Select Available dropdown, you will select Request Waiver Interruption. Once that selection is made, the waiver interruption request modal will populate. Here we will enter a start date of the waiver interruption request of 6/14. It will automatically enter an end date of 30 days for a standard interruption request. It is also worth mentioning that a waiver interruption start date can be up to 30 days in the past from the current date. However, a waiver interruption request cannot be made prior to the waiver start date. So for purpose of our training, we'll select 6/14 as the start date with a 30-day standard waiver interruption request with an end date of 7/13. Now, if you think the individual's waiver needs to be interrupted longer than 30 days, then you can check the box next to extended interruption, change the end date to a number of days that is longer than 30 days, let's say August 1st. The number of days will update to the number of days between the start date and the end date. Now again, for purpose of our training, let's uncheck the extend interruption box and change the end date back to a date that falls within the 30-day standard interruption request. Now for any interruption request, you will have to select a reason. For our training, we'll select facility placement. Then there will be a drop-down with preset facilities to choose from. If the facility is not already listed in the drop-down, then you can select Not Found and enter the facility information in these fields. For our training, let's uncheck the Not Found button, select one from the drop-down, enter the required comment, and click Submit. A modal will populate asking if we should save the waiver interruption. And let's click the Confirm button to confirm that we want the waiver interruption to be submitted. Once the interruption is submitted, you receive a success confirmation at the top. And now we see that the individual's waiver is now in a status of interrupted. Now, if you click on the individual's waiver history, you can see that it shows that the individual's status went from having an original status of active to an updated status of interrupted. Also note that the status date of 6/14 is different from the last edited date, because again, interruptions can be entered for up to 30 days in the past. Now, if the individual needs to restart the waiver earlier, then the individual can return to the waiver prior to the original interruption end date. Or again, if the individual needs to be interrupted longer than 30 days, then from the profile waiver page, select available action dropdown, click on Review Waiver Interruption. From the Review Interruption modal, there are various actions that can be taken. Again, if the individual needs to return to the waiver sooner than the original 30-day interruption end date, then the end date can be adjusted here. On the other hand, if the individual needs longer than 30 days, then the extend interruption box can be checked, and again, the end date can be adjusted accordingly. A comment must also be entered, and an action has to be taken from the please select the action to take dropdown. For now, for purpose of our training, we'll uncheck the box for extended interruption. A comment must be entered here, and then an action must be selected from this dropdown, which provides the options to actually terminate the waiver if needed, extend the interruption, or restart the waiver as needed. Note that in order to extend the interruption, the extend interruption box must be checked, and the action must be taken from the dropdown to extend the interruption. For now, we'll click on Cancel. Now, there are a few interruption-related grids to mention in the Waiver Management tab. So we'll click on Home, click on the Waiver Management tab, and show you some waiver-related grids. If there are any interruptions that are expiring soon, then those records would appear here on the Interruptions Expiring Soon grid. Also, there may be interruption and termination requests submitted for which BEADS requires more information. If BEADS returns the request and requests more information about the interruption or termination, then those records would appear on this grid, the interruption and termination request for more information. Now, let's review the process of requesting to terminate a waiver. Again, from the individual's profile waiver page, in the Select an Available Action dropdown, click on Request Waiver Termination. Once clicked, the waiver termination request modal displays. From this dropdown, select a termination reason. For our training, we will select facility placement as the termination reason. Then, we will select a termination date. Similar to waiver interruption, when facility placement is selected as the termination reason, then a pre-populated list of facilities will display in this dropdown. Again, if the facility you're looking for is not found, then check Facility Not Found. Enter the facility information in these fields, and then enter a required comment. For purpose of our training, we'll uncheck this box and select a pre-populated facility. Again, we will enter a comment as required. as to why the individual needs the waiver to be terminated, and then click Submit to confirm that the waiver should be terminated. A modal will appear asking whether the waiver termination should be saved, and we will click on Confirm. Now that the waiver termination has been processed, we see the waiver change request has saved successfully. And if we look at the individual's waiver status, we see that the individual's waiver is now terminated. Now that we've terminated an individual, let's discuss the return to previous waiver process. From the top navigation processing dropdown, select the action to return to previous waiver. And once that's selected, the return to previous waiver request modal will display. So let's go ahead and enter that information for our individual. The SSN is 100000049. The date of birth is 4/30/1991. The last name is last name 49. The Medicaid ID or RID is 1000000000049. And again, we must enter a reason in this field. All of this information has to be correctly entered into this modal in order to proceed with taking this action. After entering all of the individual's information and after entering a reason for the request, let's click on the search button. Once all the information is entered correctly in these fields, then this modal will update and ask to confirm that the return to previous waiver request should be submitted. So let's click Submit. And now we see success, return to previous waiver has been initiated. Now let's close this modal. It's important to point out that there is a AAA return to previous waiver grid for BEADS to access any requests to return to previous waiver and take action on those requests. And so to view that, we'll click on Home. And now the Waiver Management tab. Then we'll scroll down towards the bottom of the page. To view this grid for return to previous waiver. Here in this grid, you would see that there are records displayed for return to previous waiver requests that are pending, auto-approved, and denied. In addition, also on the Waiver Management tab, above this AAA return to previous waiver grid, there is a Waiver Restarts grid, slightly above, and on this grid would display records for any waivers that have been restarted after the individual has returned to the previous waiver as approved by BEADS. It's also important to note that after an individual has actually returned to the previous waiver, the AAA will have to follow the same PCISP creation process previously discussed in this training by entering the 2 required PCISP intake case notes to create a re-entry PCISP for the individual to then begin receiving services. Let's walk through the process of changing a case management entity for an individual currently assigned to a AAA. We'll begin with the scenario. An individual has decided to transfer their case management services to a different entity. The first step the AAA user takes is to generate the case management choice list. And this can be done from any of the individual's profile pages simply by clicking the Generate Case Management Choice List button. Once that button is clicked, a case management waiver modal appears. Here, the user selects the individual's waiver that the individual is currently on. Our individual here is currently on the PWFFS waiver, so we will select that here for the waiver. And now the user can select the county or counties where the individual wants to receive the case management services. It's important to note that the county field here can support either a single selection or multiple selections based on the circumstances. Now that the counties have been selected, click Generate. The system will then download a PDF copy of the case management choice list directly to the user's computer. After opening this document, we see that it contains only ICM providers. The individual will review their options, make a selection by checking the appropriate box, and then will sign the form to finalize their choice. After this form is signed, it will need to be scanned and uploaded to the individual's document library. To do this, the AAA user navigates to the Documents link in the top navigation in order to access the individual's document library. From the document library page, click the Add Upload Document button. Choose the scanned file. Enter any comment as needed, and then categorize the document by clicking on the dropdown and selecting Signature Page. Then, for the subtype, check Choice List and click Upload. A confirmation modal will appear to confirm that the signature list should be uploaded, and we'll click the Confirm button. And now we see that the individual's signed signature page has been uploaded to the individual's document library. Now, with the signed choice list uploaded, we move on to the actual change case management request. This is done from the individual's profile Manage page. With the signed choice list updated, we move on to actual change management request. This is done from the individual's profile Manage page, which again is the central place for all onboarding related actions. Select Change Case Management from the Select an Available Action dropdown, and that will display the Change Case Management modal. It will ask whether the case management choice list has been updated or uploaded, and the answer to that is yes. And then we select the county of the individual's residence. Marion County. Now we'll select the new case management entity that was selected on the individual's case management choice list. Then we will enter any comments as needed. At the bottom, it says clicking submit will refer this individual to the selected case management option. and that the case management option receiving this will need to accept the referral in order for the individual's record to be fully transferred. Let's click Submit. And now here in the individual status log, we see change case management referral type and the referral to the case management entity of the new case management entity that was selected by the individual on their case management choice list. At this point, the next step shifts to the ICM intake coordinator to accept this referral. Now, from the individual's profile manage page, the ICM can select an option to either accept the referral or reject the referral. If the referral is rejected, then the individual's record is returned to the original referring AAA. However, in our training scenario, we're going to accept the referral. Once the option is selected to accept the referral, then the accept referral modal appears. And from here, the ICM intake coordinator has the option of assigning the case manager. Enter any comments that must be entered as desired, and then click on Accept Referral. Once the referral is accepted, the individual's record is officially reassigned to the new ICM provider. The AAA can no longer access the case file, and the individual is now under the care of the selected case manager and agency. The individual's referral now enters the intake process. This is visible in the onboarding grid in the Actions Activities tab. So let's click Home. And within the Actions Activities tab, we see that the onboarding intake grid now displays the record of the individual with the change case management action taken, showing a status of accepted. To fully complete the intake process, the ICM now needs to enter the 2 required intake case notes, just like we covered during the process of creating an initial PCISP. Now let's take a moment to discuss initial case management only plans, or ICMOs. There are certain scenarios in which an individual returning to a previous waiver will qualify for an ICMO. This means that the individual is qualified to receive 2 units of CMFR case management for the purpose of initially funding the work of the case manager before a PCISP is created and submitted, and the services are authorized for the individual. If the individual has an ICMO, it can be found by going to the individual's profile waiver page, then scrolling toward the bottom of the page, finding the initial case management only plans grid, and clicking on the initial case management plan. Once the ICMO page opens, then within the services grid, click on the ICMO record to open the ICMO. Once it opens, you'll see the ICMO record shows 1 unit of case management CMFR services per month distributed for the first 2 months of the individual's plan year, with 0 units distributed for the remaining 10 months of the ICMO. Then, once the PCISP is created and submitted, it would show 0 units of CMFR case management for the first 2 months, with 1 unit of CMFR case management services distributed on the PCISP for the remaining 10 months of the individual's plan year. Let's walk through the process of transitioning an individual to the Pathways program. Individuals transitioning to Pathways will be ongoing and occur frequently due to age and/or length of time spent on another support system. First, let's discuss transition from health and wellness waiver to Pathways. For instance, if an individual is on the health and wellness waiver and is turning 60 years old soon, transition activities, discussion, and coordination between case managers and managed care entities, or MCEs, will begin outside of the system for a few months in advance of the individual's 60th birthday. Subsequently, the BEADS portal will automatically and systematically update the individual, removing them from the health and wellness waiver and placing them on the Pathways waiver. The system actions are facilitated based data received through system interfaces. The individual's Pathways enrollment and MCE assignment will be reflected in their record within the BEADS portal. When this transition occurs, the individual's health and wellness waiver will be terminated and the Pathways waiver will be activated. Here for our training individual, we see that they are on a Pathways waiver and are active. From the profile waiver page, as you can see, the waiver status change request grid is displaying the individual's transition to Pathways. Here we see a waiver type of H&W, the change request type, termination, and the reason type name as transition to Pathways. If you click on this record, a modal will display showing the waiver termination request and displaying a termination reason of transition to Pathways. Now, it's very important to understand that the AAA or ICM will retain access to the individual's record for 30 days following the termination of the health and wellness waiver due to the transition to Pathways. This allowance is in place to ensure adequate, person-centered support throughout the transition process. Now, let's look at an individual who transitioned from MFP pathways to Pathways. When an individual is enrolled in the MFP Pathways waiver and reaches their 365th day in the MFP program, or 366th day in a leap year, the system will automatically terminate the MFP Pathways waiver and activate the standard Pathways waiver. Again, as you can see from this individual's profile waiver page, the waiver status change request grid displays the previous waiver type of MFP Pathways with a change request type of termination and the reason type name of transition to Pathways. Once again, if we click on this record in this grid, the waiver termination request will appear showing a termination reason of transition to Pathways. Now, similar to the previous H&W to Pathway transition, the AAA and ICM will retain access to the individual's record for 30 days following the waiver termination and transition to Pathways, classified under the reason transition to Pathways. Once again, this allowance is in place to ensure adequate, person-centered support throughout the transition process.
Okay, that concludes today's training on the BEADS portal. We thank you for your time listening to that and following along. We do want to move into some Q&A time here. We know that there have been some questions asked through the Q&A chat, so we appreciate those. I'm going to have Shelly Thomas from BEADS is going to help lead us through the Q&A time.
Thanks, Nicole. Thank you all for joining us today for this training. We are excited that we are able to incorporate the new waivers, well, I guess they're not new, but H&W and TBI waivers into the BEADS portal. Once you get familiar with the portal, we think you're going to love it as much as we love it. So we are going to be focusing these questions on the IT portion. We do see that some of the questions are related to programmatic questions, which is not the focus of this training. So just want to put that out there. All right, we're going to start in here. Chris, I see your question about the report. I think that is something that we can get for you to show you what that will look like. All right, Catherine Watson. Yes, you will see our language is focused on the individual. So you're going to see us referring to, they're not clients, they're not patients, they are individuals who happen to have services through us. So, all right, Aaron Davis. Will current NOAs be honored after the system transition, assuming some IT glitches? Well, yes, we would be still be honoring the NOAs. So regardless of any IT issues that we may encounter, we will still have to honor those NOAs. All providers that are in CAMS that are active will come over to the BEADS portal, so that's not an issue. We do have a question here. I'm going to defer to my PCC team. Will the users will pull over from CAMS? So if someone has supervisor access in CAMS, will that pull over?
Yes, the users. Yes, the users are being mapped over from CAMS. The roles don't necessarily equate 100%, but they have been mapped over in what we believe makes sense. So as you gain access on that first day of implementation, please just reach out to the support team via Jira ticket if there are any concerns with the access that you're seeing.
Is there written instructions that we'll have access to? Nicole, I'm deferring to your team.
So there will be, as previously stated, this entire recording will be made available. There will also be those additional topic by topic type recordings. So you can get into one of those and there will be context within that recording as well to follow along with the audio. Those will become available later in June and, in that first week of July. And then we do additionally have a lot of information there in that resource page that was previously mentioned. Now, all of the current information is obviously going to be specific for the current waivers that exist in the portal, but ultimately the user guides will be updated to include the new waiver types that are, well, they're not new waivers, but the waivers that are consolidating in will also be included in those user guides. However, we really recommend leaning into the topic by topic recordings because the user guides tend to be, somewhere between 100 and a couple hundred pages long.
Thank you, Nicole. The next question is about listing 3 relationships in the system. What if they do not have 3 relationships?
Yeah, I think that one, maybe Shelly, Heather, and the BEADS team was going to formulate a response around, but currently the system does require those 3 relationships that were discussed during this training.
So, typically they may have a case manager, they may have at least one other provider, they may have a family member or someone they want to list, or even a physician if they need it. So I think you could come up with 3. All right. I've had some individuals who are non-compliant with doctors. Well, I'm sure that we all have encountered that, but the system does require a dentist and a doctor to be listed. There should always be someone listed as an emergency, whether they go routinely or not. There needs to be someone listed in the system as it is required. Do you track units for case notes? The system will not track the units for case notes. That was a CAMS feature that is not in the BDS portal. Does the system auto-generate NOAs for SP updates that go to the provider? Nicole, I'm confident in saying yes, it will generate a service authorization once it's been authorized, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Look at that. Is the password case sensitive? And if so, is PID capitalized or not? If you're talking about the password to open a document, like the service authorization, yes, PID is capitalized. Does the accept decline only apply to case transfers? Are there other instances when a case would be assigned to a AAA?
Do you want me to provide some
Yeah,
context there, Shelley?
I'm trying to remember, so yes, please.
Yeah, and hopefully this answers the question. If not, of course, again, feel free to reach out to us through the help desk. But the accept decline for the waiver invitation, which is what the accept decline is most specific to, will be upon like initial invitations. And that's something that the AAA would, the person has got to auto assign to the AAA based on their county of residence. So typically the AAA will likely take that action. And it's a little bit of a nuance between declining and using the term rejection when there are referrals, and that's more specific to like transfer, or like a AAA refers the individual to an ICM. That referral also has the option to be accepted, but in that case it's a rejection, not a decline, that would be used. So the ICM can choose to say, that they can't support that individual for one reason or another, and then it'll stay with the AAA for either service or additional referral. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
Is there a supervisor review approval of service plans prior to submission to BDS?
It's not a required system step. That was intentionally streamlined to be consistent with the way that portal operates for the waivers that are currently in the system. However, there are certain business rules, as mentioned, that do require BDS review. And then there's always the option for a CM to request BDS review on any service plan for any reason, even if those other rules don't require it. And internally, you all are open to have whatever kind of processes or policies you would like to have in place, but the system will not enforce that.
Can we get an explanation of how billing will be addressed in the system? Billing is not addressed in the system. As with all waiver services, billing will be handled outside of the system, and you will bill Gainwell directly. So that is something you will need to figure out on your own how you manage your billing. Is there a place to view provider information in the system?
I'm going to phone a friend. So there is what I don't I don't know that that's open to AAAs. You will be able to view the provider information that's associated with any of the plans and the individuals you're working with. But Chris, can you help me out? I don't believe they have direct access to like the provider management section of the system. Is that correct? Or do they?
That is correct.
Thank you for confirming.
So you would be able to see any provider that offers that service through the choice list. That would be there.
Yeah.
And then when you create, the PCISP, you would be able to select the designated provider for that area.
Yes.
Can you designate different service units each month instead of an equal amount each month? I believe the answer is yes.
Yes. Yeah, that distributing that can be done, that auto distributes evenly, can still be adjusted. So you can go in and edit those services per month, however is needed, and as long as that's in line with the other service business rules.
Well, case managers need to request all PCISPs be reviewed by BDS. I believe there is a trigger already built in that they will come to BDS for review when it meets the rules.
Yep, that's correct.
Do we track units for case notes? No, we do not. That does not happen in the system. Will assignments other than LOS and PCNT, assessments other than LOS and PCNT still be required? Not sure what other assessments we're talking about.
I think that some of the reference may be some of those other assessments that currently exist in CAMS. Example would be like the nutrition assessment. So no, that those other assessments will not be in portal with waiver consolidation and therefore not required.
Does the CM get a notification when an RFA has been approved by BDS?
Team, correct me if I answer this wrong. I don't think it's not an email notification, I don't believe, although maybe it is, but certainly there is visibility in the system when that RFA is approved. Is there also an email notification, team?
Yes, they do get emailed the SA NOA and I believe the RFA State Form 45750.
Thank you.
Are there fake clients to practice with? No, the system has real live data. There is not a training environment at this time for the BDS portal. Will the recording of this training have a transcript included? Yes, it will have a transcript that we can post. Does the PCISP get auto-terminated after 66 days of interruption?
Chris, will you review? I know that's something we hadn't included. Will you walk through that auto termination logic like we did yesterday, please?
So a standard interruption period is for 30 days. An extended interruption period is for 90 days. You can extend an extended interrupt of 90 days. If the extended interruption period is more than 90 days, it will require BDS approval. So that end date of the interruption, the record will display on an interruptions expiring soon grid 10 days before it's about to expire, which is set on that end date. You will have an additional 15 days after that end date before the individual will auto term. So action must be taken on those interruptions that are about to expire, or the individual's waiver will auto term.
Thank you, Chris. Nicole, another one for your team. Is there a way to customize the pages or grids that we see? In other words, how will supervisors be able to approve, service plans. But if an employee's off, how will they know what they need to do for that employee?
So there's not currently a way to customize the view, although I think it was referenced in the training. You can switch your view if you are assigned multiple roles, and that will change to ensure that you can see what you need to see or do related to that specific role. But being able to, under any of your roles, move things around or customize does not currently exist as a feature. Was there more to that question that I missed, Shelley?
No, I think that answers the question. Thanks.
Okay.
Question about referrals. As you are all aware, with the inviting, those all start through the AAA, and they do not send them out to an ICMO until after the initial plan is active. That is by direction of the state, because we have to manage the invite process. So once someone is ready to go active, they should be offering choice to the individual and putting that referral out to the different case management companies or whoever provider the individual chooses. So that is how the referrals work. It can also be from an ICMO to an ICMO after someone is active. So the referrals are not just limited to case management. Those referrals can also, the case manager can refer to different providers within the system. This system is not to support pathways. So I do believe we have pathways fee for service and MFP going into the portal, but those are the only two pieces of the pathway. Oops, I just clicked the button, so I lost my place. Hang on. Nicole, here's one that said yesterday, they said the nutrition screen and caregiver assessment would be in the BEADS portal. I don't believe that's going to happen 7/1.
It is not. That may have been somebody's just misspoke, but no, the nutrition assessment and the caregiver assessments will not be in the portal 7/1. Those are not required for waiver services. So while they, will be built out in the future and possibly then leverageable for waiver individuals, they're not there 7/1 since they're not required.
So are comments required for all of the comment boxes?
I don't believe, though, I would rely on one of my team members that it's all, but there are many, and it should indicate when a comment is required.
That's correct.
How do we authorize payment for home mods, specialized equipment, and vehicle mods?
I don't know if I am going to answer that question in the manner needed, but the approval that is done through the system and then the subsequent confirmation, essentially that work has been done, will then generate the authorization. So it will communicate over to the core system, just like any other authorization, and send out the appropriate notifications.
I think we went through the majority of these questions. We will be gathering all these questions to have a comprehensive FAQ to assist everyone. So we do appreciate you entering your questions. We Apologize if we missed some of them. As I mentioned earlier, I kind of lost my place, so apologize for that. But again, we do appreciate your time today. And if you have questions as you're navigating through the system, please reach out. We have lots of people here to assist and try to answer those questions for you. But again, we appreciate your time today, and we look forward to the launch of all of this in the BEAST portal. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.